Great. Good morning, everyone. And my name is Katrina Delaney. I'm a sociologist from TU Dublin, and I'm part of the ADIRE team, hence being here today. So we're going to talk about tackling unconscious bias in research. It's really just to give a flavor of this so that we start thinking about how can we approach our research in a way that we acknowledge our bias, our own personal bias, and how we bring that into our research. So just a flavor. So, sorry, I'm just trying to now. So we're going to start by just talking about what unconscious bias is, the types of unconscious bias, a tiny flavor of unconscious bias in research. We'll also talk about what we can do to tackle it within our own research. We'll have a break then, and when we come back after the break, we're going to watch a video clip and then go into breakout rooms. We have quite a small amount of people, but we'll manage, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss it and we'll finish up. So an hour and a half. Okay. So what is unconscious bias? So it is views, opinions, attitudes, stereotypes that we are unaware of and that unconsciously alter our perceptions. So it's in a way, it's baggage that we carry that we're not doing it on purpose. You know what I mean? It's in us. It's automatically activated. It happens frequently and it impacts our everyday behavior. So on a day-to-day, it can be, one makes a presumption about another person based on various attributes. And then obviously, if we're bringing that into our research, it can have an impact. So we also have it's based in our own experiences, our own background, culture, context, and what we've experienced as individuals. It may influence the way information about an individual is processed. So again, what we are carrying about a certain group or person. And this can lead to unintended disparities that have real consequences, particularly if it's in the research world, and we can think and talk about that in a minute. So examples of unconscious bias. So we have racial bias, which is making a presumption based on someone's race or ethnicity. Age bias. So for example, within a company, if there's older colleagues, the presumption can be maybe that they're tired, they're not as committed, they're, drained. And alternatively, if there's young colleagues, a bias around lack of experience and also possibly lack of commitment. Unconscious bias can also be positive. So maybe presuming because someone is younger that they have more get up and go, so it's a double-sided coin. Gender bias, presuming maybe because a woman has young children that she's less committed. The other side, that a man will be more committed because he doesn't have that presumed care role. Disability bias, seeing someone in a wheelchair and presuming that they can't do the job as well as someone not in a wheelchair. And the same then with sexual and gender minority bias, making a presumption of the way someone lives their life, their sexual preference, etc., etc. So if we think about bias in research, if we think about it in terms of quantitative research, so we have possibly issues around selection bias. So we can work on this if you think about selection bias and the opportunity for it to be reduced by randomly selecting participants. And in the case of clinical trials, randomization of participants into comparison groups. Within quantitative research as well, not accounting for participants who withdraw from the study can be problematic or who are lost. And this can result in sample bias. So selection bias, sample bias, how we approach who's going to be involved in our research. So in relation to dealing with this in quantitative research, we can endeavour to have well-designed research protocol, explicitly outline data collection and analysis processes. So this idea of, transparency. Feasibility studies, so that you have that opportunity before you do your bigger study to refine protocols and procedures and maximize one's follow-ups. So when we have a little look at qualitative research on bias, if we again, this idea of the importance of sampling. So purposeful sampling has advantages compared with convenient sampling in that you can reduce the bias because the sample is constantly refined, excuse me. So prematurely closing the selection of participants before analysis is complete can threaten the validity of a qualitative study. So sampling, making sure you can stand over your validity aspects and continue to recruit new participants into the study during data analysis until no new information emerges, data saturation. So all these steps one can take within whatever research paradigm they're operating in to try and reduce the bias. So first of all, you have to really reflect and see where you're coming from in terms of unconscious bias, and then what you can do to reduce the impact. So to tackle bias in qualitative research, validation, constant comparisons across participant accounts, rigor. And this is associated with openness, relevance to practice, and you need to make sure that you're congruent to your methodological approach. So once you set out your very clear methodological approach, that you're paying attention to it and that you can stand over it. Thirdly, appreciating and understanding how the themes were developed is an essential part of demonstrating the robustness of the findings. So in that qualitative space, to be able to say, this is how we came up with our themes and our findings. So why is it important to be aware of bias in research? Well, having an awareness of bias and unconscious bias adds value to research, to the excellence part, to creativity, and depending on what sphere you're in, to business opportunities. Being aware helps researchers and innovators to question norms and stereotypes. So again, that idea of questioning one's own unconscious bias and how that translates to the research world. It's important because it leads to an in-depth understanding of diverse needs, behaviors, and attitudes. And it can move beyond just thinking about just like, gender bias, disability bias, race bias. This in-depth understanding comes when one looks beyond that to nearly an intersectional approach. So how do different social categories interact? How do we translate that into our worldview and bring that to our research? It's important because it addresses the diverse needs of citizens, thereby enhancing the societal relevance of the knowledge, technologies, and innovations. So moving things beyond, this finding will help men or just women or whatever, to maybe Black men who are disabled, who are gay, etc., pushing things out. It's important as well because it contributes to the production of better goods, services, and beyond that to like equality, justice, and democracy, because we're looking beyond stereotypes and norms. So just an example, we can't talk about them all, but we'll talk about gender bias in research. So if one approaches research with a gender stereotype lens on, one's unconscious perceptions and or prejudices are also reproduced. An example is when, say, women, men, or gender diverse people are treated entirely differently, and certain questions are only seen as being relevant to one gender. So looking at things with a very narrow lens itself to gender stereotypes being reproduced, and one can fit other social categories into this to help us think about it. So if some findings mostly apply to male participants, this produces biased knowledge, which can be detrimental, as findings pertinent to men may be irrelevant and in the worst case harmful for women. This is often particularly pertinent in the medical world. An example is women's underrepresentation as subjects in medical research may have grave consequences for women's health. I mean, there are examples of this, and one example is not particularly about women, but there was a study done years ago around the connection between the measles vaccine and a link between autism. And this was spread through the world as a fact, and it became apparent then the media questioned it, and it turned out that the sampling was biased and the results were overplayed, and this had a detrimental effect on the uptake of measles vaccines in England. So I think sometimes one can think, oh, bias, intersectionality, unconscious bias are jargon, but they do have impact in the research world and in the world in general. Okay, so if one continues to reflect on gender bias research, if we think about that, when scientific research does not consider sex or gender as variables and treats males as the norms, generalizing findings on male samples to the population as a whole, this is obviously problematic. And I've mentioned briefly the idea of the gender bias intersecting with other biases. So an example is that gender bias can intersect with social class, and this can result in a feminization of poverty, which can be very detrimental for women living in poverty. Then, excuse me, gender bias can also intersect with race bias in academic communities. And there's been quite a bit of research done around the globe around this. A study in Brazil found that women of color found it particularly difficult to progress in their careers. So there you had the intersection, and this was linked to bias. So the steps that we can take as we approach our research. I just see a chat there. No, that's okay. So one thing that can happen is more female researchers can be recruited, and they can be, and as research participants as well. So we can separate statistical analysis of data derived from males and females, so gender disaggregated data. We can also account for ethnicity, social class, etc. To pay careful attention to the language and metaphors used in one's research is obviously very important. And it's also important to examine the positioning of your research subjects in relation to their gender, class, race, ethnicity, geographical location, and their daily routines and experiences. And depending on the societal context where you're conducting your research, different social categories will be particularly important to consider, but always consider to reflect on one's own biases. So also in relation to steps that we can take, think about our own positioning, as I said, our own biases. Who are we in relation to class, ethnicity, religion, etc.? And reflect on who's likely to be helped or harmed by your research. Think about what social groups might express approval or disapproval of the study, and why. The why is very important. Certain groups of people have had lots of bad experience with researchers, or they become a over-researched group. So we need to look at that when we approach a piece of research. So it's important to consider equality, diversity, and inclusion principles. And again, to move beyond this idea that EDI and intersectionality, unconscious bias, that these are just tick box exercises. They actually are meaningful exercises that theoretically can improve our research. So discuss your research ideas with people in your area. It's important as well not to be afraid of things like ethics committees. They can be beneficial when we try and make sure that we're not carrying unconscious bias forward with us. So we've got to the break bit a bit quick, but we can pause and see, does anyone have anything that they'd like to share at this point before we go to the clip? I think what we'll do then is go to the clip, and after the clip we can have our break, and it'll just give us more time at the other end to chat. Mirza, does that sound okay?
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. So I have the clip. I just want to try and see, can I share it? Let me see. Second.
Maybe you can just press the link
Yeah, I
and
tried that, but
copy it because it's not, I think it's not well copied. Maybe just copy the link and
yeah, I have.
paste it on Google Chrome or Safari, whatever you have.
Yes, I have it there and I have it ready to press play. I'm just trying to figure out how I share it from that point. Oh,
I think it's the same, like share the screen, and you
okay.
have like options what to share,
Okay.
and just
So,
press the Google Chrome or YouTube.
yeah.
Google gets 10 times that with over 2 million recipes.
This is a design cube
Sorry now.
and will help you improve your molded brush design. Avoid features that are too thin or too thick. And bad bosses and knit line.
Sorry,
Explore surface finish.
this is
Okay.
not. Hang
So-
on. Okay. Sorry, 1 second. No. I had this set up. I apologize. I clicked something wrong and have thrown myself off.
Can you please paste me your link in our chat,
Yes.
and then I will try to share it.
Thank you.
So chat tab is next to share screen.
Yeah. I had minimized the box by accident.
Uh-huh.
You should have it now, Mirza.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear it, see it?
I can see the box, but I can't hear anything.
Because I stopped. Okay,
Okay.
wait.
Sorry, I can't hear anything. I don't know if it is just me.
I can't either.
Oh,
You muted that, it's true. Hi, Sam.
Can you hear it
Welcome
now?
to Data Demystified.
Yes,
And in this episode, we're going to talk
Okay, I will start.
thank you.
200,000 resumes for the various jobs they are hiring for. Google gets 10 times that with over 2 million resumes. Imagine being the HR managers responsible for vetting all those. That seems like an absolutely daunting task. But in the modern age we live in, this seems like a task that could be given over to something that could process those resumes nearly instantaneously, an artificial intelligence system. In fact, that's exactly what companies like Amazon and Google have tried in the past. But the results were not what they expected. Welcome to Data Demystified. I'm Jeff Gallick, and in this episode, we're going to talk about gender bias in artificial intelligence. To be sure, there are many examples of bias in machine learning and AI systems, and I plan to make videos about those too. But for now, I want to focus on one big example in the world of resume vetting. After all, one of the goals of things like gender and racial equity is to ensure that everyone, regardless of their gender or race, has a fair shake at the most desirable jobs out there. But when companies let AI algorithms have a say at those decisions, bias has a sneaky way of creeping in. In this episode, I'm going to try and provide you with the intuition to understand how this type of bias could emerge, even when a big goal of these systems is to take potentially biased humans out of the equation altogether. On the face of it, it seems really odd that a computer program, which really is all that an AI system is, could exhibit gender bias. And to be clear, I'm going to assume, and I don't think this is a big assumption at all, that the coders who write AI resume vetting systems are not intentionally biased. I genuinely don't believe that they sit there and write code with the intent of harming women. And yet, as you'll see, that's exactly what winds up happening. So how can that be? How can we have unbiased coders, but end up with a biased system? To answer that, we need to think about how these systems work. I'm going to skip over all the complex math here because to get the intuition, you really don't need that. Instead, let's try and understand what a supervised machine learning system is, which, to be clear, is the same thing as most AI systems. Basically, the goal of this kind of system is to be able to separate hits from misses. In the context of resumes, it's separating who gets an interview and who doesn't. And the way this works is that you first need what's called a training set of resumes. Basically, you need to go back to all the resumes that were vetted by humans and classify those as hits or misses. You just see which job candidates were advanced to an interview and which weren't. Then comes the tricky part. You have to pick out features of those resumes to train your AI system on. Features could be things like the title of a previous job, duration of employment, education level, undergraduate GPA, skills listed, hobbies, and so on. Basically, you build a system that can extract as much information from a resume as possible. In reality, you would have hundreds, if not thousands, of features extracted from each resume. Anyway, you then put all those features in a big black box. This is the key machine learning algorithm, and it can take a number of forms like a neural network, a random forest, or a decision tree. The point here is that what happens in the black box is often completely a mystery to everyone, including the coders who make it. All we know is that the black box can figure out how the features of each resume relate to how likely someone is to actually get an interview. And critically, this is all done with resumes that were already vetted by humans. Now, to be fair, the coders do know how the black box works in theory, but they don't have a clue about why their system makes the choices it makes. They just know that it can separate the resumes that were advanced to an interview from those that weren't with a pretty high degree of confidence. So the algorithm might decide that a resume with these features will get an interview, but a resume with these features won't. It won't tell you why it made that decision, but the idea is that based on that original human vetted data, it figures out what those humans were looking for when deciding on who to interview. This is the training stage of the algorithm, and we'll come back to it in a bit. Once we have this part done, then we let loose the AI system on new resumes, ones that have not been vetted by humans and ones that are new to the company. Now the AI system uses what it learned from these original human vetted resumes and applies that to these new ones. The hope is that this system will be way faster than humans would be and is just as good at picking out good candidates to interview. But where does bias come from? Before I answer that, if you could take a minute to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and click that little bell icon so you don't miss out on any new content I put out, I'd really appreciate it. With that said, let's see how this type of algorithm can, and often does, result in bias. The first thing to note is that in virtually all tech companies, women are still underrepresented compared to men. For example, over the past 8 years or so, women have made up at most around 30% of the workforce at Google. And if you look across all tech, that number is closer to 24%. We can come up with many reasons why this might be true. Now, one reason might be that HR managers are biased, making AI systems, which on the face of it are free of explicit bias, ideal for helping with gender equity. That's actually one of the key reasons many companies are looking to AI systems and hiring to avoid any explicit bias that might exist, be it against women or anyone else. Well, that's the hope anyway. So why might this gender imbalance be a problem for these AI resume vetting systems? Well, let's look back at how these systems work. Remember, the systems need to be taught what is considered a good and a bad candidate. And they are taught by feeding them resumes that were previously vetted by humans. And those humans are the ones who ultimately made the hiring decisions that led to an overwhelmingly male workforce. In other words, even though gender was never explicitly fed into these AI systems, they basically learned to prefer male applicants, just like the humans before them did. After all, the whole point of these systems is to make them act like the very humans they are designed to replace. And if those humans had biases against women, then so will the algorithms that mimic them. To be really clear, I'm not actually suggesting that those original humans who preferred male applicants were actually explicitly biased against women. I mean, they could have been, but they don't need to be to get us to the same outcome. If those humans preferred candidates from male-dominated colleges, we'd see the same result. If they preferred resumes with words typically used by men, like executed and captured, we get the same outcome. If they preferred resumes from those who joined chess clubs, who happen to mostly be male, we get the same outcome. In other words, even without an explicit input of gender, the AI system is picking up on traits that are related to gender and applying those to the new candidates. It's not explicitly saying don't interview women, but it is saying don't interview people who look like this. And as it happens, because the human decisions that were used to train this system also made the same types of choices, people who look like this are women. And in case you think this is a pie in the sky type of situation, this is actually the exact thing that happened to Amazon in 2018, after which point they scrapped the system altogether and went back to human-based vetting, albeit hopefully with better efforts to minimize bias by those human resume vetters. So what you're seeing here is an example of a bad, and in this case biased, training set. The AI system can only be as good as the data it is trained on. And when that data is itself biased, even though one of the goals of using an AI system is to eliminate human biases, the system becomes just as bad as the humans before it. And this type of error has been documented in Google image search, medical treatments, parole decisions, and a whole lot more. When you have a biased training data set, you have a biased AI system. So where do we go from here? Is AI done for? Well, not quite. The good news is that people are becoming more and more aware of this problem, and they are trying much harder than they used to ensure that these systems are trained on unbiased or at least less biased data. This is not an easy problem to fix, but we can be thankful that the effort is now out there. Now, I plan to make more of these videos highlighting other types of biases that creep into automated systems like this. Are there any that you want to know about? Some examples you maybe read about but don't quite get? Do you want to learn more about the approaches used to mitigate bias in AI systems? Well, leave a comment below, and I'll not only try to keep the conversation going, but I'll try to make more of these videos just for you, my viewers. Finally, as always, thanks so much for watching.
Helen Hansel was able to win any competition she took part.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So now you can share your presentation.
Yeah. Okay. So do we still have everyone?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm going to suggest that instead of taking a break, that we go into the small group exercise, and from there we take a break and then come back and share. Unless there's any objection. No? Okay.
No, that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mirza, we have 6 participants still?
No,
No?
we have Two. They
Two.
left. Yeah. Some of
Okay.
them left.
Okay. Okay. So maybe the two that we have, if you guys just discuss amongst yourselves the question guide there, you can see that.
Yes, we can.
Great. So if you spend 15 minutes on that and then go and have a 15-minute break, and we can come back then and discuss what you've discussed. How about that?
That seems okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mirza, will you hang on there?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just leave that clip up. And so that's a 15-minute discussion and a break. Okay.
So, Kaitriona, they're asking who is going to start. We cannot hear you.
Apologies. So if they just start, the two of them, so maybe Roba introduces herself and Samija, they just discuss the questions that are there. I mean, maybe because there's just two, we can do it all together if they'd prefer that.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the topic, and it's interesting. I mean, I'm not sure if it's really in my field, but when I just read the topic unconscious bias, I just wanted to hear the presentation and the
Yeah.
meeting. Because it's for me, it's all my life. Like I'm accused to be biased just because, I'm Palestinian.
Okay.
And whenever I want to do any research about my country, it's like, okay, just don't be biased, take care, change the subject, and all of this. And this like wasting my time until I convince, the academy or the university or I don't know, the mentor or anyone in my
Yeah.
subject. So it's really, serious for me.
Yes.
So for introducing myself, I'm Ruba,
Yeah.
and I'm Palestinian. I'm PhD student
Okay.
at the SSH University, and my field is international relations and political science.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm doing something. The topic is about Palestine. One of the, the topics about Palestine relating to the state building, related to the obstacles. So it's every time like, like don't be biased and be objective and so on. But I mean. I believe with everything is happening in the world, the people all over the world start to understand everything, to understand the truth, and to
Yeah.
have a full picture of the truth. And not because I'm holding the same nationality, I will be biased. So if we really need to discuss something, is that the universities or the academians, like we should start something, not to accuse anyone, like from ABC, like don't be biased. You will have unconscious bias. I mean, I did my master, and also it was about a topic related to Palestine. It was about one of the UN security resolutions related to Palestine. And I spent 4 months convincing the university to accept my proposal. And it
Okay.
was really good, but it just, because I'm Palestinian, then I could convince them, and then I got A plus. So,
Okay.
yeah, this is, how I'm related to the topic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure if there is anything else like I need to answer.
No,
I
I
don't
think
want to take, I don't
no,
want to take more time.
no, I think it's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
What steps do you think you can take? Like, I mean, obviously, like that's like
Well,
a huge issue. And that I think if you position yourself then in that space of Palestinian research, you're really at risk of getting all these things thrown at you, aren't you?
yeah, sure. I mean, well, the steps is like to be objective academician researcher. I mean, to accept all the consequences and the results that you will come across. Maybe you will be not really understanding the situation. And I believe if any academician or researcher is into this, life, is that because they have curiosity and eager to know more, to understand,
Yeah.
So there is steps that are helping us in the research area, the methodology, and there is a mentor that can help you. There is the university, there is
Yeah.
videos on YouTube and all over, all of
Yes.
this, so it
Yeah.
will help. I believe this is, the only solution for my situation here.
Okay. And have you, I don't know what stage you are in your PhD,
Well, I'm still in the first year, about to finish the first year.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, so have you started, where are you going to do your field work?
Well, it's still like we still working on the proposal,
Okay. Yeah.
submitting the proposal, so still,
Okay, so do you think something like really reflecting on unconscious bias and biases will help your methodology section?
You mean about the presentation itself?
No, just generally that sort of area. Do you think it's something that you really need to incorporate into your work?
I mean, not really. I was just,
Yeah,
have
yeah.
curiosity. Yeah, I
Of
mean, I
course,
just,
yeah. As you say, curiosity is
yeah,
part of it.
exactly, because it's like every time sometimes like there is a stereotype, it's like, for example, any academician from the Balkan will talk about certain topics, so don't be biased,
Yeah,
any girl who is going to do something about feminist topics or anything related to women's rights, she will be a bias. So this is something that we really need to speak up about it, and to raise it even to the universities and to all the academia, like not to accuse the students immediately. You should see it in their papers. After that, you start accusing them, because this will, it's in simple words, it will make them like hesitating their idea many times before deciding on what they really want to do. Because, okay, yeah, I'm Palestinian, I'll be a bias, so let me choose something else. But I have so many topics that I need to learn, and I need to reach, a result, and I need to share it with the world. So yeah, this is my opinion.
Yes, yeah. I suppose in terms of bias, I think that an important thing is that we all carry it. And then I think it depends then, if I'm biased about you over a coffee, it's not going to, impact really. You'll be irritated and I'll be rude or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's when you bring it to the research field then that it can have that increased impact. And then I suppose as well, even, as a Palestinian researcher, I imagine it's important for people not to just presume that you have a certain outlook. So there's the bias,
Exactly.
that, okay, so they're Palestinian, so they therefore think A, B, C, D. So you're,
Yes.
and, immediately, I think it's to have as well the confidence to ask questions that may seem very straightforward, but just not to presume about.
Yeah, to presume the result, yes.
Yeah. Well, the positionality of the researcher is important.
Exactly, I agree with you.
Yeah. And I imagine like something like sample bias and like how you will get respondents will be an issue.
Yes, and the argument, the discussions also.
Yeah. And I don't know if Samaja is still there. I can't.
Yes, I'm here.
What's your research area?
So I'm a student still, but I'm studying laboratory technologies on Faculty of Health Studies, University of Sarajevo.
Okay.
Yes. So I was actually thinking of what I'm going to say. So I actually made some points. So I don't really do research for now because I'm still a student, but I do plan to. And I find ways to still incorporate gender bias into my field of study, which is laboratory technologies. So the way I think gender bias is connected to my field of study is the one you've actually already mentioned. It's women's underrepresentation as subjects in medical research. So I guess the small steps I'm taking is including gender bias in medical research in my university essays, in my homework, etc. So actually the other day, I tried incorporating this topic into my essay in the subject of clinical biochemistry, which was that many drugs that were tested by the FDA in the 80s were actually tested on men. Women were excluded, and because of that, we learn that drugs actually behave differently in men and women. So not including women can bring much more harm than good because of the wrong dosage of those drugs.
Yeah. And do you think there's any other like social category that would be important to be aware of in terms of bias for your future research or your current studies, that like beyond gender, so disability or race?
Yes, of course. Disability is one of them, but I think mainly it's gender bias because there are many factors that can affect, well, in this situation, drug dosage. It can also impact, for example, laboratory tests that are run on men and women. Those factors including menstruation or age or fertility and such.
Yeah. And in the literature on this area, like they discuss things like height bias and beauty bias, and that it's just interesting that there can be so many and that they may be impactful,
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And Roba, do you think there's any bias outside, say, ethnicity that you need to be aware of?
Can you give me examples about this?
Well, so I think the obvious one with your work would be ethnicity.
Yes, it will be, under the umbrella of ethnicity, yes.
Yes, exactly. And of course, that can be problematized in itself. But I mean, I suppose I'm thinking in sort of an intersectional way, like, so gender, I imagine, is a big issue.
Yes, of course. Gender, religion, maybe as well.
Yeah. Disability.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. So I would think from what we're talking about today, the first thing is to see what your positionality is, and then be mindful of that very much with your sampling.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you can, for example, tell me and give me the advice, like I'm meeting these examples, you know, I will not say all the time, but most of the times, like I'm meeting this example whenever I'm discussing my ideas. It's like, you know, don't be biased, be objective. And also because of my work is, you know, in the international relations and politics.
Yes.
So like don't bring your field and the way that you think in your work to you know, to research field. So what are the advices from your side,
Well,
you
from
know,
my, yeah,
to argue, for example, or to discuss, you know, with the other people, to convince them, like, you know, you need to wait to see, you know, my results, and after that you can, you know, tell me if I am a bias or not.
well, I think first of all, you need to get the sort of bias positionality stuff in place before you start sampling people, because that's going to affect your results, obviously. And then I think, like, I would query from the type of sociology that I come from that objectivity really is very difficult in the social science field. I would think a very clear, reflexive piece in your methodology, setting out as much of who you are that you're comfortable to share with. Like, there's no way you can go into any research field and not be robot. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're bringing
Yeah.
your own positionality, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. Do you know what I mean? But you
Yes.
obviously need to be like super open. And I mean, I can have a think, and maybe we can email, and I
Yes.
can have a think about some positionality stuff. I have a colleague who's a Palestinian academic as well. And you know, if I think about it offline, I might be able to have a chat with you at a later point. I know you
I
have,
would love to. Yes, I would love to.
yeah, because
Please, yeah.
the international relations is totally out of my world, but I think
Yes.
political science is a first cousin of sociology.
True, true.
You know, so if I had some time to think, and we could have a chat.
I would love to. Thank you. My
Yeah,
pleasure.
yeah, no problem. And Sumit, I think it's amazing that you're starting to think about this stuff already, and your idea is to do some postgrad work, is it?
Yes, I hope so too.
Yeah. So to try and get a handle on this, what brought you to do this, to attend this talk this morning? Just interest?
Well, interest, and also I've already attended workshops on this topic before.
Okay.
Yes. So Hub Homework actually organized some of the workshops that are gender bias related. That's why I
Okay.
kind of got into this topic, and I um, I was very interested in the topic. So now I try to continue to just attend these workshops and to educate myself more on this topic.
Yeah. So you're putting yourself in a a good position for when you go for the postgrad road.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think it seems rather impressive. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. And I think, Roba, you know, the clarity around positionality and what sort of how you position yourself methodologically will be something that you can stand over. And but I also think that as a Palestinian researcher, that's a difficult road.
Exactly, but I hope with everything that is happening now, currently, you know, people start to educate themselves and to have full picture, you know, more than ever.
Yes.
So hopefully this also will be reflect on academia and on research field, you know, just to be open also to listen to, you know, the Palestinian narrative.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember someone saying to me when I started my academic journey, and I was quite interested in Palestine, that it's so important to be able to really stand over what you say.
Exactly.
Because it's such a contentious issue.
True.
you know, so having your really solid methodology, I feel, is absolutely key for you.
Well, we hope to have more, you know, presentations and, you know, more training like this, like we
Yeah.
have today with the university. It will be really helpful.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a long journey and process, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And just on the last slide, my email address is there. Oh, I just, do you see it?
Yes, we see
Yes,
it.
we can see it.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So if you want to just take note of that, and if at some point a chat will be good, and to give me a time to think and tap into the methodological stuff and the contacts I may have in relation to Palestine.
Thank you so much.
No problem, no problem. I think really that there's no point in taking a break and coming back, that we might just finish a little bit early. But I don't know if there's any questions that you, or anything else you'd like to reflect on.
Well, for me, I'm so good. Thank you.
Okay, okay, Roba. So, Maja?
Yeah, I'm okay too. I just wanted to say it was a beautiful, this is a great topic, and the
you.
presentation was great as well. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you, and good luck with everything. It's a very exciting road ahead of you, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear.
Okay, and I think we had extra people there in the end. Did we, Mirza? Did other people come? I don't want to cut things early if.
Some of them left.
Okay, so the four is okay. Okay. All right. Okay. I look forward to hearing from you, Roba, and
Yes,
good
I
luck
will.
with everything, and feel free to mail me if there is anything.
Thank you so much. Thank you
No
for the
problem.
presentation.
Thank you. Mirza?
Yes?
Ah, you're still there.
Yeah. So I will stop recording.
Okay.